everyone who's part of this webinar today to the JCI Sandton Property Investment, How to Start webinar. My name is Nomvula Buthelezi, the Deputy Treasurer for JCI Sandton, and I'd like to welcome you to the session. Just you being here shows that you're ready not just to invest in property, but to invest in yourself to grow who you are and where you want to be. Firstly, I'd like to give you some housekeeping rules. So everyone will be muted for the duration of the session. All questions, can you write them in the chat as we proceed? And if you've got a question for a directive to a panelist, can you put the panelist's name as well? But if it's just a general question, you can put it on the chat. And all videos will also be off until the end of the session. So at the end, we'll ask everyone to switch on their videos and take a screenshot. The webinar is recorded and the link, it will be shared on YouTube and a link as well to the video and JCI Sandton social media pages. The link will be available. So if you want to watch it again, you are more than welcome. I'd like to welcome everyone again. To all the ladies, Happy Women's Month. Before I forget, Happy Women's Month. I hope it's just empowering and you're here, you can share all your great stories of being the journey of being a woman in South Africa. I'd like to welcome our Executive Vice President, Rufiwa Mutibiti. And before he steps up, I'd just like to read his profile. Rufiwa is a data analytics professional and a property and logistics entrepreneur. He has over 8 years experience as a data analytics professional with vast experience in working for financial institutions, telecoms, mining, and the insurance industry. Rufiwa holds a bachelor's degree in information technology and is a certified JCI trainer. He has been a member of JCI since 2014 and has served in numerous roles within the organization. He is constantly working on creating a platform to develop young leaders and to see sustainable impact in communities. Rufiwa believes that service to humanity is the best work of life. Vice President, we'd like to welcome you to the platform to welcome everyone officially. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Treasurer. I'd like to officially welcome everyone. We're not in church. I hope there isn't someone who cannot hear Venek. I was about to say as Senkonzweni, so I'm not going to do official welcomes until we're going to start with praise and worship. Thank you everyone for attending, and I think the purpose of this session is just around empowering young people with knowledge that should freely be available already in the respective platforms that we like so much, our social medias and the Googles of our time. But unfortunately, it is not. And I feel, and as an organization, we feel that it is important for this information to freely be available, empower young people to create passive income. You'll hear from these passionate speakers and panelists that are present here today about how to actively invest in, the money that you always talk about to your fellow colleagues and friends. We deem that as an important thing as part of empowering young people. How do you make sure that you create stable and passive income? How do you make sure that as a young person empowered to also empower others with the information that will be shared today? By no means is it a corporate thing. JCI Sandton, by the way, is a non-profit organization of young people between 18 and 40, and we pride ourselves with developing enterprising leaders for the future. And part of that is creating a platform and trainings and seminars, webinars, whatever you name it, whatever you can think of that enables young people to be productive members of society. And this is not only within our vicinity, as in Sandton or Gauteng. JCI is present all over the country, continent, and the world. Globally, we have over 200,000 members doing the exact same work that we doing in Sandton. And I hope that you find this session fruitful and you're able to learn and go and share with fellow young leaders to get in the market and start making passive income and not be salary dependent. So with that, I'd like to welcome all of you, and I hope that you find this session fruitful. Thank you, Nomvula.
Thank you so much, Executive Vice President. I'm sure everyone is welcomed now, feels welcomed and relaxed. I just want to say thank you for everyone who's part of this session today. It's a month-end Saturday. So I'm sure people have so much to do today, but the fact that you're here, we really appreciate it. And we hope that it really benefits you in starting to invest or continuing to invest in the property market. I'd like to introduce our panelists for today. Our first panelist is Doreen Maphanga, an academic graduate from UNISA and Mill Park Business School, born in Soweto but grew up in Pretoria. She started primary school at Butholwa and further went to Banareng High School. Due to the political riots, stayed in the old former Bophuthatswana, which is now I think Hammanskraal, studied nursing at Holy Cross and went to work at Ga-Rankuwa Hospital, and which is now known as George Mukhari Hospital. Joined banking and worked at Absa Cars Division, promoted to Mpumalanga as a regional sales manager in retail banking, worked at Absa Home Loan as a business development manager, and joined Standard Bank as a senior credit strategic manager. A mother of two, a daughter who is an engineer, and a son who is in varsity. Her statement is, I am a mentor to my kids. My son is pursuing a career and business in app development, which I am his mentor. Welcome so much, Ms. Doreen Maphanga. The second panelist is Wendy Khumalo. Wendy Khumalo is an international accredited former business English tutor and leader in Toastmasters International. She became passionate about real estate after she was left in awe and disarray when she ventured into the property ownership. The multiple challenges first-time home buyers face without expert representation and lack of knowledge ultimately propelled her entrepreneurial spirit into the real estate professional field. Her rigorous work in leadership and passion for business has led her to be a partnership with Keller Williams Realtor in the city of Cape Town as a candidate property practitioner, otherwise known as a real estate agent. This, coupled with an international leadership role as one of the lead real estate agents for United Home Group, a global property referral company in affiliation with the Keller Williams Group. Welcome, Wendy Khumalo. And our last panelist is Brightness Zikali. Brightness Zikali is a property professional with extensive experience in commercial property management. Her interests include global commercial property, valuation, sustainability in real estate, and project management. She currently works for Dipula Income Fund, a JCI-listed real estate investment trust. She holds a BSc honors in real estate management from the University of Estate Management in the UK. She's a member of JCI Sandton and enjoys outdoor activities, reading, and active citizenship. I'd like to welcome all our panelists. Those are their bios. I'm sure we're going to have a great discussion today. Please remember to post all your questions on the group. Firstly, I'd like to have opening words on how to start in the property market from the panelists, just an opening statement before we get into the direct questions. So we'll start with Doreen Mapanga. Any opening statement on how to start in the property market?
I think property market is the biggest decision one has to make. So when one has to go into property, there are a lot of things to consider. But I will talk when we go into detail. Thank you. And property is a good thing to have. It's a need. It's not a want.
Thank you so much, Doreen. Opening words from Wendy.
Thank you, Nomvula. I basically feel like real estate is an open market, like Doreen has already said. But most importantly, it's something you need to go into with a big open mind, with an ability to learn and an eagerness to grow. So you really need to consider a lot of factors when going into that space. And I hope that we will cover most of them in this webinar.
Okay, thank you so much, Wendy. Brightness.
Thank you, Nomvula. And I'm delighted to be a part of this webinar. And today, actually, it gives me an opportunity to share much knowledge regarding commercial investment. Oftentimes, when you speak to people and they ask you, when you say you are in property, they often assume that property is all about residential. However, there are quite a number of sectors which this platform has provided us to share with all the attendees, and hopefully by the end of this webinar, people would have much knowledge what commercial property entails, and if they consider going into that investment sector, what are the benefits? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think now we are ready to start the discussion. Every time anyone talks about property, we often hear reference to Robert Kiyosaki, passive income, and most of us don't know what passive income is and how, but how to start, the first thing we want to know, how do I identify the type of property I want to invest in? What are the factors I need to consider when looking at starting to invest in property? So property identification, the type of property, how do I identify it, and what factors I need to look at. If Wendy can take us through residential property, Brightness through commercial property, and Doreen through the financial factors that we need to look at. Thank you. You can go, Wendy.
Residential property is very much well known. That's what most people start at, and that's what most people do. But what you really need to know is that real estate is a location-based market, and there are many factors that determine whether we're in a buyer's market, a seller's market, or an equally balanced market. Now, although the average home buyer would focus more on what their lifestyle needs are and perhaps what their family needs are, when you are trying to invest in property, you have to take a completely different approach. So there's so many factors to consider, and like any business, you'll have to draft a plan and consider firstly the type of investment you want to venture into. For example, is it a primary property investment where you stay in the premises and you either invest long-term through value appreciation, or you get short-term investment returns through rentals where you have extra rooms or extra suites in the premises for tenants, and then you can get your income through this way, as well as property and value appreciation. And this can really apply to properties from 600,000 rands up to 30 million upwards. Really, this type of investment is reliable, and it's literally for any type of investor. Now, another residential property investment opportunity is the well-known one, where you are buying a property for the sole purpose of income. So you don't stay in the premises, and you have it managed either by yourself, a property management company, a hotel group, Airbnb. You can also go for house flipping, where you buy, renovate, and have the property appreciate in value and then earn its profits by reselling. Or you can simply join a reliable property investment group where you're able to invest in a group. And then once you do know the type of investment that you want, you need to consider the type of property that you need. For residential properties, it could be a vacant land where you can build on. It could be a brand new development like estates and complexes. Would you need a vacation home or a villa? This is where your bread and breakfasts come into play. Or maybe long-term rental houses or apartments. It's just very important that you do your extensive research on each of these property investment types before you go into it. And remember, this is a business plan, so you'll also need to consider the area. Real estate agents are usually equipped in this knowledge, but it's very important that you do your own research as well. So drive around the potential area, ask around, get the statistics, get up to date with the market conditions. Know if it's a buyer's market where the supply is too high and prices are low, or if it's a seller's market where the demand is high and stock is low, therefore prices get a little bit higher. What is the annual index of the area? This is the rate at which property value increases in an area, and you can look at this from a period of 10 years. So you can know whether this is a good investment for appreciation. You also want to know the comparative market value of the property that you see potential in. This is simply an estimation of a property's value based on what's currently sold recently in the area, what properties are selling for in the area, the conditions of the property. This particular process is usually done by real estate agents, so you might outsource that professional service to get that stats. And then lastly, you'll have to think about the loan qualification process for buying a residential home. Getting pre-qualified if you're considering a home loan is vital. And this, coupled with putting your numbers together for your return on investment and finances, which I believe would be covered extensively in the financial section. So these are all factors that you need to consider and include in your business plan if you're looking to invest in residential property.
Thank you so much, Wendy. That was a mouthful and so much information that I think when the question section comes, there'll be a lot of questions to really break it down for us. Brightness, if you can take us through the commercial side of what factors we need to consider when we want to start investing in the commercial property market.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nomvula. Just like Wendy has also mentioned with regards to residential, it's also applicable to commercial property. However, it entails more data collection when it comes to the commercial sector. There are different sectors in commercial. So when we talk of commercial property, firstly, you are looking at retail property, you're looking at your logistics, warehousing, you're looking at office space. Those are just a few which I can mention at this point. So you should have that kind of knowledge exactly which sector you would want to invest in. What are the factors which affect that particular sector? Are you looking at diversifying your portfolio? And location is quite primary. You wouldn't consider investing in the middle of nowhere. So you also look at the amenities, the aesthetics of that particular property which you want to invest in. Also, to add, in terms of the rental growth, what sort of rental growth percentage are you focusing in the near future for that particular investment? You're also looking at the yields. What sort of yields are you expecting to, as a return of your investment? Also, the macroeconomic environments, you have to consider the economy in any case if you're considering investing. Look, commercial property is highly capital value. High capital value is needed. Therefore, you wouldn't want to invest in for instance, a property which is not going to give you a return in the period of time, within a period of time. And also, you also have to look at the demographics when you're looking at the macroeconomic conditions of that particular property. Some properties might come affordable in the market, but you also have to look at the demographics of that location of the property. Are there people who are attracted to that property, or it's losing its flair? And also, it needs a creative mind. When you're investing in commercial property, you're not only looking at getting income at the end of the day. You need to be creative. If I could put an example, there is lots of repurposing of property currently, whereby, you know, this property used to be a commercial property and suddenly it's become a block of residential flats. So that's creativity. So an investor needs to have that kind of mindset. So I can say quite a lot. However, I'll stop here for now, but those are some of the few considerations when you're going into commercial investment.
Thank you so much, Brightness. The one thing I've heard from both you and Wendy is that location is key. So I think once we've considered location, the rest will also come into play. But I know this part, when considering the finances, that's where most people get scared. So if Doreen can explain to us the factors that we need to consider as starting out property investors, what factors do we need to consider when going into property investment based on the finances of the different markets? Doreen?
Thank you so much. As Wendy and Brightness have alluded that when you buying a property, you need to consider a lot of factors. We also consider in terms of financing. I'm standing here not on behalf of the bank, but on behalf of my expertise in the banking sector. However, you need to consider whether you are buying a vacant land. And when you are buying a vacant land also, I need to add on what Wendy and Brightness have said. When you are buying a vacant land, you need to know that when you are buying a vacant land, how long are you going to have that vacant land? Because you need to start repaying that vacant land. So if you are not putting any structure there, then you'll be paying the vacant land maybe plus the property that you are residing in, which you will not have any returns on investment. But however, when one buy a property, you need to compile your budget. You need to know whether you can be able to afford to pay that property. Your income, if you are self-employed, if you are working, you need to have an income and be able to calculate the baseline in terms of affordability. You need to check your reserves, your debts, whether you will be able to pay the conveyancing cost. Conveyancing is registration cost, attorney's cost, because when you're buying a property, you need to register that property in your name. So you need to have at least 10% of the value of the property so that you can pay it to the attorney. You need to take into consideration that there will be groceries, there will be a property insurance. There is also a life cover, but that one can be optional, where a customer will say, I need to have a life cover for in case if I passed on, my kids or my family member should not be moved out of that house, property. You need to consider that you need a furniture in that house. You cannot just stay in empty houses. So when you do a property, decide to buy a property, it's a very, very big investment that you need to. You cannot just wake up today and say, I'm buying that property. You need to go on to a lot of things. You need to check your credit profile. You need to check whether this house is an existing property or is it building loan or a vacant land. There are a lot of factors that the bank also look at taking into consideration. You need to also check your neighborhood, because if you're staying in a house, you need to check, am I having kids? Will those kids be able to go to school? What will be the mode of school? So if you're buying a house in the middle of nowhere, like Brightness has said, if you have to go and rent it out, who's gonna rent from that property? Are you gonna get returns? So there are a lot of factors that you need to take into consideration. But the main factor is how you conduct your accounts, your credit record, because if you do have a bad credit record, no one wants to borrow you. If you come to my house and say, borrow me 10 rand, I'll ask you, how will you be able to pay? Because of if you cannot have that, showing that capability of paying, no one will be able to have you in their book. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doreen. I think the factor that we don't really consider when we're looking at buying or investing into property is that I still need to be able to live buying groceries and furniture beyond investing in the property. And I think that is a factor that we almost always overlook when investing into property. Thank you so much for the first round of questions. So now that I've identified my location, my property that I want to invest in, the real estate agent has done the evaluation of the location, and I've got all the steps that I need to have. What is my next step? Now, I've identified I want to buy this location, in this location, this type of property, whether it's commercial or residential. What is my next step that I need to do to make sure I start the purchasing of the property? Can we have it as Wendy going first? As an agent, what things should I look for when inspecting the property? How do I negotiate the price? And then Rufiwa can also come in and look at the property trends, the crime, and other external factors that we need to consider as a next step before actual purchasing or investing in that property. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nombula. So if you have found that property and you've gathered all your steps, it fits your business plan and it is exactly what you're looking for, the next fundamental step in residential property is placing your offer. The real estate market is a very competitive market and houses go in and out of the market almost very frequently. The national average of houses on the market is literally 60 to 90 days. So it's really important that once you have identified that property, you do not waste further time. And like I said, it's important that before you even start looking for the houses, you are pre-approved for a loan if that's the route you're taking. You cannot shop if you don't know how much you qualified for. So you're pre-qualified, you've spotted the house, you love it, you're going for it, you speak to your agent, you put it an offer. This is where negotiations are very vital. Now, as a buyer, you should consider whether or not there are other offers on the table to determine how competitive your offer can be. This decision, there are many deciding factors that go into the offer to purchase. We call this an OTP. Very big document with lots of information. That's the contract for you offering to purchase someone's house, which still needs to get approved by the seller. So this is the most vital part of the process because it literally determines whether you get that property or not. So while you want your agent to handle this, you need to know what it entails yourself, and you cannot sign and send an OTP that you do not understand. If you are taking a mortgage, one of the suspensive conditions that you would need to offer is whether you want your loan to be fully paid by the bank or if you will be putting in a deposit. So if you're going for a mortgage bond, it is completely okay to write an offer with no deposit. But if you are buying cash, then it's very mandatory for you to include a cash deposit in your offer, which can range from 10 to 30% in down payment. And then there's a turnaround time that is another deciding factor on your offer to purchase, which for a bond, once your offer is accepted, you will be given 21 business days. That's the waiting period for your bond to be approved by the bank. And if the bank doesn't respond in those 21 days, you are given a 14 extra day grace period. Your deposit submission, if you're buying cash or putting in a deposit, can range from 7 to 14 days from the day of acceptance. So it's also important to know if you have funds, when and how long can you access them before you write that offer. Other negotiation factors in the OTP, you could be the necessary repairs. These are things you can put in this contract. They can either be completed by the seller, or you can choose to do the repairs or the necessary repairs. You need to consider movable items, whether or not there are items in the property that the seller is willing to include in the purchase price. Sometimes this could be furniture, the entire furniture of the house. The owner can be like, okay, this is the property value. I'm selling you this property at the property value, but I'm just going to include my furniture. That needs to be in the contract. You also need to include occupation. If you propose to move into the home before the registration process is complete, then you'll have to pay occupational rent to the owner while the property is being registered. Or if the owners after registration need a little bit of time to move out, then they will be paying occupational rent to you as the new owner. These conditions need to be in the offer to purchase, so you don't have he said, she said situations during the transfer. And then lastly, under the purchase, the offer to purchase, you need to be aware of the 72-hour clause, which, if included in the offer to purchase, allows the seller to continue marketing that property. And if they receive a better offer, they can activate the clause, which gives you, the buyer, 72 hours to finalize the suspensive conditions of your purchase. And then if the 72 hours over, the offer can be rendered null and void, allowing this seller to accept a rival offer. So if this clause is activated, you need to be really aware and ready to meet the suspensive conditions or move on. This is where deals fall off most of the time. And then if you see that a home that you like is under offer, this means that you can still be able to make an offer subject to the 72-hour clause. Now, I don't know if you want me to speak a little bit more about the inspection process.
No, I think we'll leave that for later. And then we can come back to that question. Thank you so much, Wendy. Rufiwa, if you can now take us through after now I've identified my property trends, how do I know which one is the best one, the crime rate of the area, other external factors that I need to consider before locking myself into this property?
I think, thanks, Nomvula. I think some of the things we have thoroughly already mentioned, things like crimes in the area, even before, when you're still maybe taking you back to identification, the type of property, the area that you're buying. Are you buying in a real, in an estate? Are you buying in a gated community? Are you buying in standalone houses? This really count in terms of security and some of the things that we deem as important, and taking into account why you are buying this property. Are you buying to invest? Are you buying to stay? Are you buying? I think Wendy already spoke a lot on this. As an Airbnb customer, and I want to probably rent out your investment property for a weekend, is it in a real? Is it in an estate? Do I feel safe staying in your property for the weekend for whatever number of days that I've chosen? Is it in a gated community? Will I feel safe when I stay in that area for the duration of the time that I've chosen? So these things are important for one to think of and really consider before you even get to a process where you say, now I'm signing the OTP or negotiating the price. And it also helps you negotiate, by the way, as Wendy has said. So when you go negotiate, you can easily say, but agent that is selling, agent X who's selling the property, I've seen that the property, the crime trends in the past 2 years have been this much, or this and that, hijacking, whatever it is that is you've identified. These things can help you actually negotiate the price of the property before you go into signing your OTP. And one thing that I've also seen and been asked for advice frequently is, you do not sign your first offer to purchase. You never sign your first offer to purchase. Go and negotiate. You always, and this is something that I think is important for as young investors, rather, to really invest in that. I don't know how much it costs to hire a a property agent for the purposes of not an agent who's selling you the property, but someone, an expert rather, who will help you be able to say, a Wendy, for example, to say, Wendy, you know, I've identified this property and they're saying this property cost R1 million and it's in this area. And when Wendy comes like, no ways, you cannot buy this property for R1 million. The surrounding houses don't even cost that much, you know. So these are important things that I feel you need to consider, and also outsourcing the service, the inspection service, the going through OTPs and all of that initial processes of you getting into property. And also thinking about how, like I said, the purpose of the property that you're buying it for. Are you going to rent it out? Are you going to Airbnb it? Consider the factors thereof. If it's high crime area, will I feel comfortable staying in your property as I'm vacating or as I'm visiting that area? Those things are important for one to think about. And also, I think Wendy has also spoken extensively on property trends. How much how much houses have been sold in this area for the past years? What were the reasons? What is the tenure of ownership in the area? That counts a lot, because if you go interview all the past owners in the area, they probably will tell you something in common. Maybe, I don't know, there's no power, frequently there is crime, there's too much hijacking, there is whatever the reason is. So those factors are really important for you to consider before you even get to a point where you are signing an OTP.
Thank
If
you
I
so
may
much.
please add on that, Rafiwa, I think you've raised
Yes.
important points. But you need to also understand that your OTP is not a binding document. So you do not entirely have to have perfect information for you to sign an offer. You can get out of the offer to purchase at any time that you need. Just maybe one of the determining factors on whether or not you want to proceed once you've signed the offer to purchase is the inspection report, which you should never ever skip.
Thank you so much for that information. I think now we know that we can even hire someone else to help you.
Nombolo,
Yes,
can
Doreen?
I add something? So a lot
Yes.
of people made a mistake also when they say a proper OTP is not a binding order. There are some other clauses, so you need to read all the T's and terms and conditions on that offer to purchase, because some of the clauses, they will say that you can pull back within 14 days. Some you can pull back when you have been declined, but when you have been approved, there is a fee, a cost for you to pulling out. So you need to read your terms and condition on offer to purchase. What is the terms? And you need to know them before you can even attach your signature. Because I remember one friend of mine, she got an OTP, was approved, and she wanted to pull out then. She had to pay 10% of some sorts of the money. So you need to make sure that you have familiarized yourself with the clauses that is on that offer to purchase. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the one thing that Rufua mentioned is that you can hire people to help you with the process of analyzing the OTP and the whole deal of purchasing. I think as a side question, I want to know, as I know young people, we don't read even the manual to just operating our TV. If you buy a new TV, you just switch it on, you don't read the manual. So I can imagine an OTP, I will never read all the clauses. So who do I hire and where do I get those people from who will help me analyze if this deal is correct? Am I getting the best deal or not? If I'm a first-time buyer, I don't know all of that. I don't even know I need to hire someone else. So this is like new information. Where do I get those people from? If anyone has an answer for us.
I think Wendy is the very the correct person to give you the answer. So as a property investor myself, I think I've been in the sort of the space for some time. So it's easy for me to say, this is not something I want to put my money into. So I think Wendy would then be able to give us a bit more clarity on how do we go about even approaching maybe an estate agent or a company to do these things?
Yes, thank you, Rafiwa. I think something that the majority of us South Africans are not aware of is that the real estate agency professional goes beyond listing a property and having people come and buy that property for you. In the United States, it's a more formal process, but in South Africa, it's not really clarified. But essentially, a real estate agent can represent a seller and they can also represent a buyer. And when they represent you as a buyer, you are not charged anything. So if you want to invest in property and you don't know where to go for stats and all that stuff, you simply ask for the real estate agent who works in that area because they will know the area better, one. And then two, you let them know exactly what your goals and your intentions are. And then they will be able to represent you as a buyer. That's when they will be reading the OTP to you. Eventually, actually, there are clauses in the OTP that stipulate that you do not sign this without knowing the full details, and has the agent fully explain the OTP to you. So before you even sign that OTP, you need to sit down with your buyer's agent, the agent representing you in this entire transaction, and they need to go through every single part of the OTP, and you need to ask questions before you put your signature on it. So it's simply, if you want to invest in property, hire a real estate agent. It is completely free. In return, you just need to be honest and loyal with them because they can do everything for you for free, work and, bust their asses off for you. But if you later decide to just ditch them in the middle of the process, that's when it is a loss for them because then they do not get paid until the transaction is closed. So simply, it's free services.
Thank you. Now we know there's some free services that we can benefit from. So I hope everyone has taken note of that. And Brightness, in the commercial space, are there agents that can also help you free?
I think on that particular one, it comes in on an individual basis. Look, I'm not in the space of selling property. Real estate income trusts, they operate differently in the sense that they are the owners of properties. So on that note, rather, I would say on an individual basis, I'm able to be an advisor to anyone who is looking at purchasing a commercial property. But just to add, there are like outsourced property management companies who actually offer that particular service. They've got like a brokerage department which does look into acquisition of properties and auctioning of properties as well.
Thank you for that information. I think that will really help anyone on the platform or who will watch it later to decide how they will go about buying or investing into property moving forward. The next part of this is now the finance part. I heard in the beginning that you need to get pre-qualified before you even start identifying the property. This is the part no one likes because the banks will reject you. Now you don't know where to get money from. And we don't even know, are we supposed to keep deposit or no deposit? If the panelists can help us in that area, with Wendy taking us, what type of financing should I look for as an investor, first-time buyer in the residential markets? Where do I get the financing from? If not from, is there an alternative from banks? As well as in the commercial sector, I know with buying land is also a different financing model. If you guys can take us through those financing models, and then Doreen can take us through what do I need to get qualified? Thank you. I don't know anyone can start.
Perhaps Doreen can lead us.
Can I lead everyone in this financing model? So one needs to look at, is that property are you a first-time home buyer? Are you a South African? Because the government has developed a program for South African, which are individual customers, not for investment purpose, but for residential. So if you are a South African person and you are earning between 1,501 to 22,000, you can get a subsidy using the National Housing Finance Corporation. So it's a FLIPS. We call that model a FLIPS. So you never benefited from an RDP. You never owned a property before. You've got dependents that depend on you. You can approach the government and say, I need to buy a property. But the government will be able to give you that on condition that the bank has already approved you in terms of finance. So I normally tell people, when you want to do it, first pull up your credit record. Every person can get a free credit record report, which will, if you don't know how to interpret, the experience they can be able to interpret for you. Or if you've got your credit record and you can interpret, you are free to even ask for my details, then I can be able to help you in the interpretation of the credit record, because that's the first thing that you need to do. You cannot go and say, I want to buy a property when you don't know, you don't even conduct financial affairs in a good way, or you have got some judgment. Some people never knew that there are judgment onto their profile and you were not even served. You find that people, creditors, they can say to you, but you've never paid us for the past 10 years, and you don't know that that debt is prescribed. You don't have to pay. The only debt that takes longer to prescribe is a home loan. And also I normally tell people that if you have, prescription comes in when a person has failed to pay his legal obligation, and after 3 years, maybe it's an Edgar's account, they didn't serve you with summons, they didn't list you on ITC, then it's prescription. But should they call you and you agree on telephonically and say to them that, no, I'll start to pay, you have already interrupted that prescription. So you will be obliged to pay that debt. So we need to also be in consideration of that. So National Housing Finance Corporation, they can give a money that you can use either as a deposit or as a reduced installment on your house when you buy a house, but on condition that the bank has approved you. So the bank will look at credit record, they look at how you conduct your affairs on credit bureau, they look at whether you had judgment, were you ever debt review, were you ever sequestrated, all of those things, and also the conduct on your account. You cannot expect the bank to give you money or anyone to give you money. I normally say, like the normal way when the neighbor comes and say, borrow me 20 rands. You need to know, when am I going to get my 20 rands? Because if I don't have capability on repaying the 20 rands, why would I give you my 20 rands? So I will not give you my 20 rands. So that's a model that to go into. So I will share with you on details where I can post on chats where you can get the information regarding flips, and where also you can get your credit record, how to pull a free credit record. That's the first thing that you need to do before you even consider, because you get embarrassed when you said, how you declined, you are listed, you know, you've got judgment, but you never knew. But you can get a free credit record every year as an individual. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doreen. I think you touched on debt, and already we might be virtual, but I can sense the tension. Once you talk about debt and young people, there's tension already. So now I know my credit score. Yes.
No, I didn't touch also on something that also you need to also, now it's also a difficult time in terms of interest rate. You find that you need to also consider those types of effects when buying the interest rate. Where do I fix? Do I do a variable interest rate? But that one I'll touch when we come into that. But there are a lot of components when you're buying into a property. And also the bank evaluate that property and see whether that property, is it worth it, the price that you're selling? I cannot sell something that is worth 100,000 and I sell it for 200,000. The bank will decline based on the property condition. Thank you.
Thank you. I think now we have pre-qualified at the bank. So I've pre-qualified, my credit record is fine. What do I do next now at a bank? What must I consider? Now I'm starting my bond application.
So you So once you have done all the pre-qualifying, you need to attach your bank statement, proof of address, you need to attach your application form also needs to be completed, and the bank put the application process and come up with a verdict on condition. And once done that, then they will send your application to lawyers who will do the transfer and registration of the document to the tax office of the property in your name. So which you will pay for those fees, all those costs. Like I said, you need to save at least 10% of those costs. And you need to be cognizant that also if you are buying from an site, there is levy part of it. So levy, when you are waiting for it to register, for the house to register at the deeds office, the body corporate might request you to pay 3 times the levy amount. So supposing the levy is 1,000 rands, you need to pay 3,000 rands prior to registering property. You need to go into the municipality also for municipality rates. There are also a deposit. So when you buy a property, there are a lot of components that you need to take into consideration. And also from the bank side. And also we'll check whether your risk, are you a good customer? Do you want to have you in our books? Once you have been approved, then if you fall within affordable housing, they will have to take you through borrower's education. The borrower's education is to educate you, give you more knowledge to say what happens from here, because we can't just dump you with a 20-year, 10 or 20 or 30-year debts without equipping you with information. So we need to equip you with information to say, should you miss your home loan installment, what happened? Should you not pay your house, what happened? Should you not pay your rates and taxes, your levy, what happens? What are the needs and wants? What are the things that for the first time you can cut on? We don't simply say cut on clothing immediately, but we tell you that for that time, is it a need or is it a want? So can you die without having that? And outline all those things. I normally will joke and say to drink cold drink, how many cold drinks do you drink a day? So if you're drinking 10, can't you reduce that and save it for some other things? And also you need to save, that some other difficult circumstances will come. You need to make sure that you also have saved. So before you even buy the property, because once you don't even have a furniture, you will have a rough patch to go into that property. You'll sleep on the mattress because you've never saved for those components, So you need to make sure that you've saved prior to buying. And because when you're buying now, you're going into a long-term commitment, and that long-term commitment, it can take 10 to 30 years. And during this circumstances where we've got, everything has gone up and whatever, you might be staying for a longer time without even having the curtains and a bed, which is a need also. And another thing you need to consider is, so if you are buying that time, the bank has approved you, do I have that deposit? They didn't the full amount. Do I have that to pay? Because if maybe you're buying property of 2 million, just giving an example, and the bank approved 80%, you need to come and pay 20% deposit. Do I have that? Do I have over and above the conveyancing cost? Do I have the rates and taxes? Do I have, and if it's not a new property, do the other one will pay the transfer and the other one will pay the registration? All those components of money, look at into that before you, because otherwise you go to the micro loan or mashonisa, if you may call them, and go and apply and say, I want to pay that. But you could have started planning before you even go into that and, into that direction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doreen. I think the saving part is what's important here, and most of the time we know about the transfer and the lawyer fees, but we don't know about the municipality and the levies that we need to save for. So thank you for that additional information. Now we know we need to save for longer and save more money. I think, yes, Wendy, if you can take us now that the finance part, which part do you play, which role do you play in assisting the buyer?
Thank you. Yeah, I think the good thing to know is that you do not have to apply for the loan yourself. You do not have to go to the bank, fill in, you don't have to go through this process by yourself. When you work with a real estate agent, 99% of the time, they will suggest a bond originator to take you through that part of the process. So usually we work with trusted partners like SA Home Loans or Uber Loans. So we'll have that one bond originator who's going to work with you. And what they will do is essentially ask necessary information that they need, documents that they will need for you, and then they will do the process of applying for you. Why this is good is because they can apply to every single bank as a bond originator, which you really can't do on your own. And then the next thing is that you will be able to compare rates from different banks. Sometimes one bank will give you 100% loan, another one will give you 75, another one will give you 105%, and you'll have to weigh your options and go for the best partners. And sometimes the interest rates are different as well. This is where you can choose the best interest rate depending on what bank offers you get. And one other important aspect of this is, like I said, working closely with your bond originator that is suggested to you, because one of the challenges that people face when buying property is really not getting denied. So having this process done for you can then help you. And I think it's important to stress that home loans are not the only way to get financing if you do not have cash. You can actually tap into home equity. This mainly applies for someone who already has a property. So, you do not have to be an investor by yourself. Some people may choose to invest with a partner. Some people may invest with family. Some people can go for crowdfunding. But what's important to know is if you do have an existing home that you're paying a loan for, or one of your family members who can trust you to invest in, to invest in you has a home equity loan, you can draft up contracts that can help you. If the house is yours, take the sum that is remaining, or rather use the sum that you have already paid for the loan, take that sum because you've already given the bank that money, and then finance a new property. That's another way of ensuring that you can get a new property. And of course, this means that whomever is paying for that home has a good credit score and has been paying timelessly and on time. So that's another way to leverage on the finances, as well as crowdfunding businesses. I saw a comment or question about crowdfunding as well. I do know that there are property stock sales. I think you just need to go for the most reliable one. I know about SACCIs where that eventually you can start investing in property from 10,000 rands, where you invest with groups of people. You can invest with your family as well. This is advantageous because they take care of most of the processes. They'll have their own management system. You'll just be receiving passive income, getting money in your bank every month, and they will take care of the entire process involved. So it's important to know that you can outsource or try other ways of getting funding, even angel investors. If you have that solid business plan, you possibly could find someone who might be willing to invest in you.
Thank you so much, Wendy. And if you're buying land for residential, so you bought land, but you want to build, what is the process of getting the financing for the land and the building? You're muted, Wendy.
Sorry, thank you. What's going to be important here is your plan. And like I said, you treat this like a business. And if you are planning on getting a vacant land, you need to get with a town planner as quick as possible. You will have to hire these services so they can get the information and the layouts of the land. They could also put up the plan for you. If you are going to the bank with a proposal to develop land, you would need to have all the possible statistics you could have about that property. So the town, if you work with a town planner, they will assist with servitudes, knowing where you can or cannot build in that land, because there may be rules on that. You'll be able to draft, you can hire an engineer to basically come up with a sketch of a plan and of exactly what you envision the place to look like. So you need to have a very tight business plan, and your town planner and architecture can work with you on that. And they also, the good thing about the real estate industry is that every professional sector has its partners, right? So if you have a real estate agency, they work with conveyancing attorneys, with bond attorneys. So if you're working with a town planner, they're working with the government sectors where you can get approved throughout this process. So it's really important to get professionals to get things done for you if you really want to take this serious and eliminate mistakes, because you can really make mistakes that could be very costly. So really, if you are doing vacant land, consult a town planner.
And just to add, Nomvula, there is the one important thing to note is buying land for investment. There, you need to have a good business plan, because the other thing the bank will do is when you submit an application for land, they will ask you for a building plan, right? And building plan will entail in 2 months' time, this will be done. In 3 months' time, this will be done. Because what happens is when you do apply, so most of the time is when you do apply for a building loan, when you do apply rather for a vacant land, with that will come coupled with a building loan, is you don't get all of that money at once, right? They don't just throw money at you and say, go and do whatever you want, build whatever you want, and then you can come back to us, reevaluate the property, and then we can talk, right? The money that you get for that specific type of property is you'll get the money to buy the land. Then there's a whole period where it's almost in phases, that when this is complete, we'll give you the money for this. When this is complete, we'll give you the money to build further, right? That's very important for you to understand. And the biggest thing that we also need to make everyone aware of is you are likely, as a first-time buyer, not to get 100% of the loan, right? Be it residential, be it commercial, whatever it is. So there's options like business loans, for example, right? You can take a business loan, a business property loan, I'll call it like that. Doreen will give us the correct name for it, right? Where it's still a loan, especially for land. And this is something I've done a couple of times, is you'll get a business loan because you are not able to get a property, a vacant land loan, because you don't want the bank involved in the affairs of how you build out your property, right? So that's one way to avoid the bank's check boxes in terms of the land must be like this, your property must be like this must be like that, right? And one other thing that I like that Wendy mentioned as well is the bank is not your sole provider of investing in property, right? Invest in time in finding out. I saw a question there about crowdfunding that Wendy also touched on, is you don't wait for as a first-time buyer, your only option is not the bank. Your only option is not, there is things like turf, right? There is a lot of organizations that are offering loans to young people. The government, there's actually an article that I'll share a link to as well, that the government was endorsing back rooms in townships, and having young people start buying those, because that's a lucrative market, but nobody really looks at it because they think, hey, and I mean, there's every market has its challenge, and it's something that you must look into before you get into it. But look at lucrative market, look at why people are not buying land in a specific place. Maybe that might be an advantage for you because you know how people, for example, operate in the township. You won't have rental issue problems, which is very common. Find ways to also do your own research before you buy. Don't just rely on opening a website and it tells you that, yeah, you crowdfunding, angel investor, all of these things that are common to everyone. Also invest in finding out the best property stock files, like Wendy said. We don't know, unfortunately, we can't know all of them, right? And see, I think the one she mentioned is something that's been popular and making headlines, I think in the past 2-3 years. And go and find out about it, right? Go and find out if it's something that you can invest in. And remember, property investment is not only you buying a physical property. There is bonds, there is, I think Brightness will speak to that on a commercial spaces. There is, what's this company? Ataco, you know, they listed in the JSE. How do I invest in their commercial property pack? How do I, you know, all those things? It's not only buying a physical property, and that's something you must be aware of as a first-time buyer or someone looking into investing into property.
Thank you so much for that, Rufiwa. I think now we becoming more open-minded that the bank is not our sole provider for funding. And we can also invest in different ways in property, not just by buying the property. So thank you for that. Brightness, how do I seek funding for commercial property? Sure. If you can take us through that process.
Thank you. So the processes are almost similar with residential. So oftentimes the traditional way of going to the banks, yes, people do go and approach the banks. However, there is other avenues as well. There's the National Empowerment Fund, and I would advise people to actually research on that. There is funding in that particular section, as well as a syndicate funding. This is whereby individuals or companies, they come together, they put the resources together, and they are able to purchase a property. And there is your Development Bank of South Africa. Those are some of the banks which you need to approach, the land banks. So there is lots of funding available, but at the same time, look, when you're purchasing a commercial property, as I mentioned earlier, it's of a higher capital value. Therefore, there is no bank which is just going to give you 100 million and you walk away. So you would find also that you're competing with other big investors in the market. And with the banks, with the big investors, they usually get their loans without even having to make a down payment because of their sizable balance sheet. However, as a starter, perhaps you need to raise maybe 10% or 20% of the acquisition value of that particular property. So those are some of the avenues which you have to look at. As Rufiwa mentioned as well, we don't necessarily have to look at having to buy an expensive property for a start. We can look at the real estate income trusts. They are listed in the stock exchange. You can actually buy shares into the company and you start building from there. Then you start looking at acquiring your first property from the dividends, which you're going to earn from investing in the stock market. So those are some of the avenues which are available, but I would really encourage people to research more and get more information and clarity further. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brightness, for that. We can't talk about property finance and not talk about the interest rates. What interest rates am I looking at when I invest into property? How does it affect my property? Which type of interest rate must I go, fixed or the variable one? So if Brightness, you can start. Interest rates in the commercial property. What does it look like? How does it affect my deposit? Do I need to put in a deposit to lower my interest rate? Do I not? So if you can take us through that.
Absolutely. Look, at this point, I'm giving you the basic general knowledge. As I mentioned, I'm not really invested in the purchasing of commercial property. So from the interest rates, obviously the higher interest rates, it would affect your mortgage. It means you will be paying more on a monthly basis. And at the same time, the income which you can get from a commercial property, you have to look at the growth in that particular area in terms of the rental growth. As much as interest rates are going to affect you, are you also going to get a return from that particular property, which you will be able to pay your monthly mortgages towards that particular property. So I would stop there for now in terms of commercial, and perhaps give others an opportunity to speak as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Doreen, can you explain to us the variable and fixed interest rate? Yes.
Okay, Nomvula, a variable interest rate is your home loan interest rate can go up or down depending on the prime rate. Normally, when the South African Reserve Bank increases the rate, then it has an impact on your installment. Should maybe they have increased the rate, if you were paying 5,000 based on the rates that they've increased, then your installment will go up. If they do decrease into the rate, then your installment will go down. That's a variable interest rate. A fixed rate is an unchanging rate. That rate is not changed at all. Whether the Reserve Bank increases or decreases, that means your installment will remain the same towards the term.
So which one do I go for? Which one is the best one?
It's a personal choice to say which one do I go for, because I cannot say go for a fixed or I cannot say go for the variable. But based on how the interest rate is going up so often, some people will prefer to fix it for a certain period. You can fix it maybe for a year or two, based on the approval. Because of I foresee that there will be again a hike in interest rate again coming for the end of this year. So that means your home loan and people will be under pressure to repay home loan installments. So maybe you can fix it for a period of time, and when they reduce this, then you know you're going to leave it on there. But I cannot give people an advice to say, when do you do your interest rate? You need to do your research and say, okay, fine, my installment is 10,000. If I don't fix it, then what happens if they increase? And if I fix it, what happens if you drop it? You know, it's a catch to catch, an individual, you know, you are the one who should decide yourself to say which one to opt for.
Thank you so much, Doreen. Wendy, now I'm looking at my interest rates. How does that affect the whole conveyancing process of purchasing a property? And if I'm going to purchase a property solely for rental, now I'm going to use it as an investment, how do I factor in my interest rate into the rental income I want? Thanks.
Absolutely. You need to consider those factors when it comes to return on investment. You don't want to have a plan of getting 9,000 rands in rent and then figure out that you need to pay a little bit more on your home loan because of interest rates, and then you end up not meeting your quota or your goals. One thing you can do personally, because the interest rate is not only affected by the economy or inflation, it can also be affected by you. So your credit score, it can determine how much your interest rate is. So the standard one right now for banks is 8.25. I think we've moved a little bit to 8.5, but the standard one is 8.25. And depending on what your credit score is, the bank can lower the interest rates for you. So make sure that you want to have your credit score somewhere between, well, above 670, 680, those are very good credit records that could lower your interest rates. And then your deposit. If you are paying a bigger chunk in deposit, that gives the bank less risk, and that could also affect the type of interest rates that the banks might give you. And remember, like I said, the bond originator would come back to you with different offers from different banks, and then you need to weigh which one works for you based on what your return on income is. So you can play a huge factor in ensuring that you get the best interest rates.
Thank you. So now let's say I don't have a deposit for the property and then my interest rate is high. And then 5 or 6 months down the line, I get like a sum of money and I want to pay it towards my bond. Can I renegotiate my interest rate at that point?
One good thing to know is that bank loans, right, are not completely stagnant when it comes to your payments. So, for example, you can say the bank can give you a certain price. For example, you need to pay 6,000 a month, and you might say, you know what, I want to pay 7,000 a month. That will lower the length of your loan, first of all, and it will in turn, make sure that you get on your house much quicker. But also what you then can do to make sure that you have safeguarded yourself is if you do get a huge portion of money, let's say at the end of year 1 from your investments, and you feel like you have enough to, mitigate your loan, you can go to the banks, talk to them, and you can put in any chunk of money that you like, and then they would have to renegotiate the terms and just look at the structure of how that will go. But as an investor, you do want your property to also help you lower the length of your loan or lower the loan amount in time. So you might want to consider that on your yearly financial plans for your return on income. So yes, you can definitely go sit down with the banks and tell them what your plans are if you want to mitigate that.
Thank you so much. And for Rufiwa, what financing mistakes do you see most investors and first-time buyers make when making their first purchase?
I think, like I said in the beginning, I think it starts from the minute you do the application, right? Choosing the right, obviously negotiating the price first before you even negotiating your purchase price. It starts there, right? Doing the due diligence work that Doreen, Brightness, and Wendy have spoken to, knowing what is your credit score, knowing your credit history, take the initiative of going through that process. The one thing we neglect as young people is, I have a friend who had a Vodacom contract that he didn't follow up through with many years ago. And this was like a 29 rands contract, right? Monthly for the, I don't know, last 10 years or so. And when he wanted to do a home loan in 2019, they told him that you blacklisted because you have this account that you've not been paying. So imagine being blacklisted because you didn't pay 29 rands, right? So little silly mistakes like that will count a lot towards contributing on how much money you end up paying as your repayment, how much interest you get from the bank, how much you get as profit overall in your investment property, because it will be affected. It will be affected by how much money you pay versus how much your rental is on any kind of property that you're getting, be it Airbnb, whatever the purpose of the property is. At the end of the day, the amount you get from your tenants, your whoever is hiring or lending your property at that point versus how much you're paying to the bank needs to make sense to you, right? So I think that is important for anyone to consider when they going through this process, and not make the mistake of saying, also, if you already have a residence, a property that you stay in. So a Brightness, for example, I have a house that I stay in, and I have a investment property that I want to buy. How much are you going to pay in that investment property? Because when you apply to the bank, you don't say you don't have income when you don't have income already when you buy the property, right? You only have income after you buy the property. There's also a risk of, if there's no tenants in that property, who's going to pay that amount? Can you afford to pay that amount, right? So those questions are important for you to answer before you even go into investing. I think these things should be considered before, when you're doing your calculation, when you get that, I don't know, bond originator results from your bond originator, and check how much is my monthly repayment, how much am I am I going to rent this property out for? Do your research in the area. How much are people paying? How much are people renting out apartments or house or whatever it is that you have bought? That will greatly contribute to how much you make at the end of the day as a property investor.
Thank you so much.
Can I add, Nomvula, on something? I know blacklist is not part of the discussion, but I think it's very important for me to touch on the thing. So when he mentioned that a friend is that he paid 29 rent and he eventually was blacklisted, there are processes that people will need to be aware of in terms of blacklist. So if you were not served summons where you've signed those summons or they served you on email or those, there's a proof that someone sent to you. The credit provider or whoever it may be, that means they've listed you unlawfully. So you can dispute it with Experian and dispute the process, because they should show Experian that all avenues we try to reach to this customer and she didn't want to pay or he didn't want to pay. And then we served with summons and then we had to blacklist the customer. But if those processes are not being done, then you can dispute that with Experian. It normally takes 20 working days for the dispute. Thank you.
Thank you. That is some valuable information that now we know how to handle certain types of debt. But everyone, please check your credit records and your credit scores. Make sure you know that you are blacklisted or not beforehand. I think my last round of questions to our panelists is, when I consider buying a property now, what are the factors I need to consider? Do I do it myself or do I do it through a property management company? And what are the benefits of doing it myself? And what are the benefits of doing it through a property management company for residential, for commercial, and the bank as well, and for financing? Is it better if I seek finance myself or through a property management company? So if Brightness can start and give us the commercial perspective.
I think it's always wise to get advice from experienced companies. It's all good and well when you have the deposit and you want to just dive in because you've identified a property, but there's so much which is needed to be done before you even move on to purchasing that particular property. To an extent, even valuation of the property, as earlier mentioned by my other colleagues, that you need to negotiate the price and so on and so forth. Even the value of the property, you need to have a valuator, someone who is able to give you the actual price of the property. Because some sellers, they've got like an investment idea, whatever the cost might be, and they would think, okay, if I sell this particular asset, it would bring me the money. So that's quite critical that you get professional advice, and also applicable to property management as well. Obviously, if you're buying a commercial property, you're expecting a return out of it. In terms of the rental, you might not have like the full experience and knowledge on how to have that return from a commercial property. Therefore, it's always advisable to get a professional to run your affairs, because at the end of the day, you do not want an asset which is just gonna wear out and not get the return you want. And also maintaining that particular asset to retain that value is of paramount as well. So yes, my advice is, yes, you can do it your own to a certain extent. It's always advisable to seek professional assistance.
Thank you, Brightness. Wendy, you can take us through residential.
Well, to me, when it comes to property management, right? So you have your property, the bank has been, you've been approved, and now you have your villa or your little bed and breakfast, and then you want to know whether you should hire a property management company to manage this property for you or not. First and foremost, logistics, right? Like, how far are you from the property? It's pretty clear that if you do stay in the premises, it might be very easy to manage the tenants and develop your own property management system. However, if you stay very far away from the property or you have multiple property investments, you might want to consider hiring a real estate agency to near your investment property, important, to manage this property for you. And then you need to think about the property management process itself. As a property manager, you'll have to deal with and handle maintenance issues. You'll have to deal with contracts, repairs, collections of payment, screening of tenants, complaints, sometimes evictions, which can be so red taped and legal, because the law does have protection laws be for tenants. Actually, you'll get to learn as a landlord that tenants are very protected by the law, so you'll need to be able to handle all of that. Now, with all these factors in mind, are you willing to commit into learning and growing in those expertise, right? And have been control of these responsibilities? Or do you prefer to delegate those tasks to a professional establishment or a management company? And are you willing to give them that much control of your property? Because the truth is, if a property manager makes a mistake, you can be held liable for it as the owner, because they are making these decisions on your behalf. So if you want to consider that liability as well and get to speak with that company and really read their terms, guys, I cannot stress enough how important it is to read your contracts, because companies do want to protect themselves consistently. So you can negotiate some of those terms to make sure that you are also protecting yourself as a landlord. And then it all boils down to affordability. Property management companies can charge you from 4% to 12% of the management fee, which is taken from your monthly rent, yes. And sometimes that could even exclude the placement fee for finding a tenant for you. So you either have to put on your negotiation skills here, if your budget allows you, or ultimately you can manage the property yourself, especially if you want to explore the field of real estate. Just make sure that if you are doing this yourself, you have an accountant or a lawyer for evictions. An accountant, maybe if you don't want to hire them on a monthly basis, you can have them do your company statements twice or once a year. So like I said, you need to really immerse yourself in the structure if you want to do it yourself, to mitigate the risk and to overall know what's going on with your asset. Your property is your investment. You've put your money on it, so you need to be able to protect it at all costs.
Thank you so much, Doreen. And maybe just a brief answer. If I hire property management, Doreen, what are there any considerations I need to have when dealing with the bank? Maybe I need refinancing for that property. Does the bank consider that it's operated by a property manager?
Sorry, Nomvula, is it for me or for Wendy?
For you, Doreen. So do I need what do I need to consider when going to the bank and the property is not managed by myself, but through a property manager? Are there any considerations that the bank will maybe say, okay, we can't refinance or help you financially because you don't manage it directly?
So we only look at the aspect of the customer, not the aspect of other contracts that we've entered into. But as Wendy said, I've wrote a difference. If it's a property you are buying from the estate, you need to make sure also you've got those financials for that estate. You don't want to put yourself, even the banks get that where you are buying from the estate, we want the financials of the estate because you are paying levy, and that levy needs to pay for some of the services in the estate. If it's not being paid, then the bank will decline you based on. Don't want to find yourself onto where you bought into an estate and an estate is going for liquidation. So those are, we look also at financials. So you as also a person that is buying, you need to look at the financials also. And when what she said, she spoke about a real estate agency where you pay them and they manage all the nitty-gritties of rental, placement, eviction. Eviction can be a cumbersome exercise, and also and people are protected. And also, you know, when you want to sell that property, will you be able to sell it? The people that are currently occupying it, will they give access of people to come and view the house? You need to take into consideration that we as a, I think the bank don't look at the third party, we look at the current customers, what the customer tells. But it's very important buying to look also the financials that estate where you are buying from.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Doreen.
Can I just add one more point? And guys, once you are a landlord, if you have invested in an estate or a complex, please, please, please stay in touch with the body corporate. Like, attend the meetings. Every estate or complex should have a body corporate meeting where all the owners are invited yearly to know what's happening, the financials, the statements. You need to know, like you said, to gauge whether the investment or the complex you've invested in really is doing things right, and they are not just going to be liquidated in some time. So you really need to look into that and make sure that you attend yearly body corporate meetings so you are in touch with what's happening in that complex.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Wendy. I think from the questions, most of them have been answered. I see one that has not been answered. So the question is, what is the better vehicle for buying property? Is it personal capacity or through a company? Anyone can answer that?
So I think as an active investor, it's the best, obviously as a first time buyer, your company, your registered company might not have anything on its name. So when you go into the bank, then you need to probably need to present what's the word they use? What do you have that this company will be able to pay this property? So you might likely be, would likely be that you can buy your first property, investment property, on your personal capacity, and then later transfer it into a company. This is something I've done, right? And you gradually, then when you start increasing your property portfolio, then you start buying them directly with your company's name, right? And things like lands, if you're buying them cash, you can directly put them under the company's name. You don't need to. And the reason for this, a strong reason for this, is finances at the end of when SARS season comes, right? It's much easier for you to just give your statement of account and everything finance related from one bank account than for you to keep receipts of every transaction you make for the whole year, preparing for that tax season, right? So it might be easier from that perspective, but I mean, everyone would have their preferences, but the more you have, the more liability you have under your name, the more difficult it's going to be when come tax season to say, there was a 600, where's the receipt? Because all of these things need to account for at the end of the day when tax season comes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Just to add to that, Nomvula,
Yes,
when you buy using a company, just ensure that you're not going to use that company to run the business. Because oftentimes, if you run the business and the business falls into debt, you are highly likely to lose your property for whosoever the creditor can recover their debt by selling your property. So you have to be careful. Do not use that company to run other businesses, risky businesses, which can make you fall into debt.
Thank you. I think that's, yeah, some valuable information. So that means you'll have to have a property company and another business as well. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. I think for closing off, if each panelist can just give us tips, the services that they offer, and how can they be contacted? Brightness, you can start.
Thank you. So in the commercial space, property management, as mentioned earlier, is highly involving. And if you need any advice in that particular space, please do contact me. I'm available. First point of call, perhaps use the link in and drop your details. I'll be able to return your call or so on and so forth. And just to quickly add as well, commercial property is an amazing investment space. People should not be afraid to inquire and get more information, especially young people. It's a very lucrative business. It's very risky. The higher the risk, the higher the returns. Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy?
Thank you, Nomvula. My piece of advice is protect your investment. Like, think your decisions through and don't be afraid to ask questions. You know what you want, stand by it, whether it's choosing the professionals you want to work with, what you want to spend your money on, screening and approving tenants, your vendors. Listen, everybody's going to sell you on something or sell you onto something. So don't be afraid to say no if it doesn't serve you or your needs. Never lose sight of your goals and really communicate them at every stage, especially if you're working with a real estate agent. There's nothing as painful as having dishonesty throughout a transaction. Like, are you married? Are you married in community of property? Such things can make or break a deal. So you really need to be upfront with your real estate agent. And my real estate hack, my biggest real estate hack is hire a real estate agent. Like I said, if you are a buyer, it is completely free if you're buying residential property to have that professional representation. You do not have to pay a cent. All you have to do is be honest and loyal to that real estate agent throughout the entire process of the transaction. And if you'd like to know more about my services and the company that I'm partnered with, you can reach out to me on my email. It's wendy.kumalo@kwsa.co.za. Or you can reach out to me on my social media platforms. I'm always on Instagram, Wendy_real estate. I also have reels and videos where I share knowledge on a weekly basis. And you can connect with me on Facebook at Wendy_Kumalo. Other than that, please do your research. Ask for referrals. You know, your network is your net worth for real. You know a friend that knows a real estate agent. You know a friend that knows a bond originator. Really outsource to this professional services so you can get the best out of your investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Wendy. Doreen?
I don't offer personal advice because it might be deemed as a conflict of interest. But I can say to you guys, speak to your bank. The bank will be able to assist you. For you to get free credit record, to go on to www.mycreditcheck.co.za. In terms of the flips that is offered by the government, you can go on to NHFC, National Housing Finance Corporation, for you to get further information. But you can speak to your bank. Your bank will be able to be the most suitable vehicle that can be able to assist you. But if you want to reach me out, I'm Morongwe, MORONGWE, Ratebe on Facebook. So you can be able to post something if you want me to speak. Maybe you want to interpret your credit record that you not be able to understand the experience. And also for experience contact details, 861-514131. I repeat, 861-514131. And for National Housing Finance Corporation contact details, it's 011-644-9855. They will be to us. Let's pass the information, especially for the first-time home buyer that are in 3,501 rand to 22,000, that they can qualify if they've never owned a property and they've got a spouse or dependent. They can qualify for that once-off money. Can be able to be of help to reduce the bond installment and also the debts on the home. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Doreen. I'd like to now call on Rufiwa to do the closing remarks, the Executive Vice President of JCI Sandton.
Thank you, Nomvula. I think a lot has been shared today, and the most important things maybe just to highlight a bit is you now know how to identify property. You know the avenues that you need to go to identify potential property to invest in. You know what avenues or services available for you to go seek funding, and you know what's the best way to go about managing a property. And that is the information that we needed to communicate today to young people who are looking into invest and creating passive income in their personal and or professional capacities. So please do this. I saw questions about if this will be shared. This will be shared will be uploaded to YouTube, and the link will be shared with everyone who's registered to be an attendee for this webinar. We will share a bulk email, a broadcast email will be shared with everyone, and share with friends. The idea is here sharing this information so everyone knows the avenues that are freely available. These things are freely available. Wendy has stated as well that these consultancy sort of role for estate agents, those things are free, right? It's free until obviously you get to a point where you purchase, and you obviously someone's time always needs to be paid, right? So let's use these services and ensure that we really get into the space. It's not difficult, like you said, it's not that difficult. The only thing that I'd advise you go read up on, like I said, research on things you get yourself into regarding property. These stock property, stock files, etc., read up on them, find out, there's reviews on Google, ask people who are inside, who have invested in those stock file groups. How is it going? Are they getting their returns? Things like that. Invest in finding information for yourself. I know as young people that is not our best strength, but please do the due diligence before you get into the space. And I think in closing, I'd just like to also thank the panelists who've made the time to come and share this information with the young people and professionals that are joining us today. And I hope everyone found this fruitful. They've shared their contact details. Where you need advice, you need professional services, those who offer professional services, please do contact them. I am a executive vice president of JCI Sandton, and I've specified in the beginning what exactly we do. And if as a young person, part of this call, you'd like to get involved in some of the work that we do, you're more than welcome to send an email to the email that you will receive the recording with. We're an organization that develops young leaders for a changing world. And part of it is empowering you with necessary knowledge, skills, and for you to be able to survive in this economy. As you can see, it's not looking all that great. And please do, please share. I'm saying it for the 5th time, I'm sure. Please share, guys. This information you are given for free, also give others for free, and ensure that Wendy gets some 50 inboxes on LinkedIn. Brightness gets some 100, LinkedIn messages. I would love to hear complaints from all of them to say, hey guys, you've now put our information out there and it's really getting hot. That's what I want to hear. That is impact for us, and that's what defines sharing knowledge and empowering young people in our country, especially first-time buyers. So thank you everyone for attending, and I hope this was a fruitful session for everyone in attendance.
Before we dismiss everybody, may I please answer the question on the chat box? Is a person married in community of property? Can someone buy a property as a separate entity? It's very important to know that if you are married in a community of property, that's exactly what it means. Your property is a community. It's like both of you. So even if like maybe your partner, your husband, or you buying a property with another partner, with someone else, your spouse, if you are married in community of property, their name will be in the deeds title. And if you are getting your property lettered, sold, or anything that you do, your spouse's signature needs to be there as well. So it's a together thing all the way. And then when it comes to investing for your children, I know some people want to buy property in their children's name to leave them something. I would advise putting it in a family trust instead. You can have any number of people in the trust, maybe all your kids or different ones. What you want to do this is that if the property is in their name, and once, God forbid, anything happens to you, they will be liable for property gains tax as the owners of the property. So they will have to pay money to get that property. But if it is in a family trust, then they won't, if the house is willed onto them, they won't have to pay any fees. So be aware of that as well.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for answering that last minute question. And thank you so much for everyone who is part of this discussion, the panelists for really sharing the valuable knowledge for free. And for JCI Sandton, thank you for coming up with this initiative to really empower young people to get into property investment.